This was Amazon. I think it was like $20.
It is giving like 90s Terminator, which is a look.
I'm so excited to be chatting with you because you have this innate ability to just look cool, sound cool. What do you call that? Your gravity? Oh my God, I'm sounding stupid now. But everything that is in your gravity is cool. So I, by effect, am cool today.
Hell yeah.
Let's go.
Hell yeah. I mean, I super appreciate that. It's very sweet. It's very sweet. I feel very like I've just been given flowers.
Oh, of course. Well-deserved. Again, this is not just me talking. It's so funny because I shared that I would be bringing you onto the pod today, and everyone in my circle that's cool was super pumped about it, like obviously giving you your flowers too. So I was like, all right. So it's not just me that thinks that.
Well, hell yeah, let's do it. Let's give them what they want.
Let's give the world what it needs and the people what they want. I'm excited to have you on. Obviously, that goes without saying, even though I've already said it. I'm excited to learn a little bit about just your trajectory into Friends with Benefits too, right? Because you've been in this space for some time and you're a founder as well. So I'd love to get your perspective on being a founder and maybe how that's influencing your role now as a CMO, even though I saw Friends with Benefits cast Don't Hire a CMO at FWB. And then we'll go and look long-term at FWB Fest too, because that's on the horizon and almost here.
Yeah, we're in last mile to Fest, 8 weeks. So the compression that we've been predicting since January basically is like very alive and well right now. But yeah, I guess, to answer your question, my trajectory to FWB. So I joined the space. I'm trying to avoid using the word onboarded. I know people are kind of salty about that right now. So I'm trying to think of other ways. But I basically joined the space, got into the industry in the fall of 2021. I started my Twitter account, the one that I have now back then. And I onboarded, God, there you go. It's like so deeply ingrained. So I joined at a time when DAOs were alive and well. Everyone was like DAO surfing and Discords, like dropping into the intro channels and being like GM and saying a little bit about who you are. And I ended up in the M Club. I don't know if anyone remembers M Club, which was Seed Club's sub-DAO for Mirror. Basically, it was before Mirror had real sort of curation or go-to-market. And so M Club, the idea behind M Club was sort of to provide that curatorial arm. So I remember joining the Seed Club server on Discord and being like, there's too many people in here, it's too crowded. And then finding M Club tucked in there. And I was like, cool, there's 200 people, and the bounty to actually become a member is pretty simple. It's tweet about M Club, curate 3 articles, and then you get 5 M Club, and you join the DAO. So I joined M Club, and then at the time, the person who was kind of leading or stewarding M Club was working full time for C Club, and they kind of pulled me up, and I basically got kind of recruited to join the C Club core team. And so that was in the winter, January, February of 2022. So, 2+ years ago, so not super long ago. And yeah, it's kind of, goes on from there. I basically started leading the media strategy, which was just a kind of fancy way to say our marketing strategy, which was very digital native, very social native and content native. And then I did that through the spring of last year. And then I left C Club full time to go found Vessel. So that was what you're referring to and saying I was a founder. And yes, I had I guess this is one of the core questions for me. I would love people's thoughts on this. Am I still a founder? Technically I am, yes, still the CEO of Vessel, but Vessel is, fully deprecated as a project right now. And the sort of arc there was last spring when I was leaving C Club. We're about a year on the anniversary for Broadcast Summit in New York City, which was the first on-chain media summit. Super exciting. Worked on that with Jihad Esmail, formerly from Forefront, Rafa the Builder, Dan Hunt from Foster, LDF, who was then at LivePeer, and Shannon from LivePeer as well. So we had kind of the group of us ragtag group of us coordinated this first on-chain media summit. And shortly after, then went on to found Vessel. And the idea behind Vessel was to be the launchpad for on-chain media strategies, specifically focused on, small to medium-sized brands, native to Web3 to start, and then eventually, once we felt like the market conditions were right and we had proven out the concept, would open it up to non-Web3 brands or larger entities. It's interesting to come this far from that original idea because, it's been a year and a lot has changed in the space. And we're even seeing other companies or other brands kind of picking up that idea of like basically building a front end or building an interface for what we previously had to kind of patchwork together in order to launch effective Web3 native marketing strategies. So it's pretty cool to see that. And then in November of this last year, as I was making the decision to basically stop fundraising for Vessel, I was just going through some significant personal stuff, and I texted Greg Bresnitz, so now CEO of FWB. At the time, he was head of partnerships. I'd worked with him on Eyewitness Live, which was Seed Club's consumer crypto event at Fest 2023, and so I basically produced that for Seed Club as like kind of part of my final scope. And I just messaged Greg and I was like, hey, I'm looking for just like any sort of freelance work, I'm kind of figuring out what's next for me. And he was like, why don't you come and run our socials? Like we need someone to run socials. But then very quickly realized that it was way more than socials. And Greg also on that call, said he was about to be announced as the next CEO of FWB. And I was so excited. I had worked with Greg, obviously, in the collaboration between C Club and Fest last year. But I've known him for a little bit longer than that. And I've just really been impressed with the way he works and the way that he sort of turned Fest around as well. So it's, basically we can talk more about the last 6 months. It's been 6 months, but just super, super happy to be where I am right now.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. It's not like I didn't know your journey, but it's just, I love to kind of see the way that it's all woven together over time. And then, I'm going to ask a lot more questions, especially when it comes to like social, because I think one of the things that you were focusing on with Vessel was this idea of like how on-chain media and advertisement can come together. At least I remember that was like the original riff. Mm-hmm. And so as it stands, I think that the tools, like you were saying, that are becoming available now are a lot more powerful, but also a lot more simpler to use, where now creators have a better way to engage and reward their communities, where before, it was a bit of a patchwork. Also, I realized, because I was fanboying here way too much, I didn't even do the intro. So all of this has been the cold intro, and I love it. And I'm just going to real quickly, I'm going to do a brief intro because my editor is going to kill me if I don't do this, because he uses this for every episode. So GM, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Consumer Chronicles, a Crypto Sapiens podcast. We meet here oh my gosh, I can't speak. We meet here every week to define and demystify consumer crypto with the people who are building it. Make sure to sign up to our newsletter at cryptosapiens.xyz and become a member there too. Before we get started, I want to thank our generous supporters, Mosaic Labs, The Optimism Collective, and Bankless DAO. All right, that's out of the way. How embarrassing. I am just like fumbling over myself.
We got it.
Yeah, that's out of the way. Anyways, you were talking about this kind of transition that you made from Seed Club to becoming a founder, and then from a founder story to your journey now at FWB. Firstly, as a founder, I'll tell you, you never are not a founder. That's it. It's like you are a president of the United States. Someone else gets elected. You are still a president. You've always been. That's a role that you have in your pocket. So, Steph, you are a founder indefinitely. And whether Vessel is completely deprecated now or not, I mean, it is. Whatever you do in the future as a founder, I think what you learn from that experience there is going to only help you create a better product, a better business. Everything I've done in the past, my wife likes to tell me that. She goes, everything you've done is always helps you kind of achieve the next big thing, right? So
Yeah.
I think in this case, it's the same thing for you. And I think every founder would agree that's kind of the same thing as well. So with that said, I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on Seed Club, where it was when you first started, I guess, and where it's at now, because I think that in itself has transitioned so much. And also as an incubator, because I feel like FWB Fest was, it sounds like it was a collaboration. There was some collaboration there between Friends with Benefits and Seed Club. How does that relationship look now, going into Fest 24? Because now it sounds like the cool kids are just calling it Fest, and I've been calling it FWB Fest this whole time.
Yeah, it's funny because we actually passed a proposal for an exploration on spinning out Fest for 2025. This was a couple weeks ago in the DAO. So it is intentional that we're moving from FWB Fest to just Fest, as we think about how we might continue to make Fest super sustaining and like not be a sort of like financial drain on the DAO, for instance, and have the DAO be able to focus on the things it does really well. So yeah, I mean, in full transparency, haven't been at Seed Club in about a year and have just been watching from the sidelines and watching Cheryl absolutely kill the newsletter. I like have to give her a shout out. It's so nice when, like my experience of being at Seed Club was having walked into a room where the brand was primarily expressed over Twitter. That was the primary distribution channel. And the Twitter account had gained a pretty sizable following. It was like maybe 30K or something like that. And kind of similar to FWB, that follower count was very clearly the result of hype cycle, the hype cycle that preceded me joining in like February 2022 had a big role to play in the follower count on Seed Club's primary channel, right? So just to say that really clearly. And I say this about FWB as well. And I think a lot of projects in the space that during the hype cycles, especially 2021, like both funding and followers were super easy to come by, right? And that's not to deny the value of the brands that came out of that hype cycle. So, Seed Club is a really important player in the space, a really important brand. Same thing with FWB. But when I joined the team, I first, ran a bunch of sort of like historical like metrics tracking on our Twitter presence and noticed that, there was no strategy to that growth, right? There was no, there was really intermittent posting to Twitter. It was like sometimes even like once a month. And yet you would still see daily, at the peak, it was like 5,000 followers a day at some point. It was like really something. So that to me felt like a really exciting challenge. I'm like, great, we have this amazing foundation. How do we then take what has been established from the brand level and actually institute a meaningful media or marketing strategy? And so started with Twitter. We then launched a newsletter. We did like a brief stint with editorial. My favorite sort of gold medal for my work at Seed Club was working on Jess's podcast. So previously it was just called the Club Podcast. I believe it was the third or fourth season, we decided to change the name to Building at the Edges. That season we kicked off with Marty from Pool Suite. But there was all of this work for like 2 months that went leading up to that launch, where we kind of like started the podcast from ground zero. I was like, Jess, what are the conversations that you actually want to be having? Let's base all of these episodes less around like who can we pull in, but what are the conversations that you want to have? Because an observation that he had made was that he felt like the conversations that went the best were the ones he was interested in having, right? Makes sense. So I was like, let's start with that. What are the topics you want to talk about? What are the conversations you want to talk about? Then who are the best people to talk about those things with? So that felt like a really big unlock. And then we also just created a way more robust marketing strategy for every single episode. So we did an anchor editorial that went out through the newsletter, and then we had anywhere from 4 to 6 posts out to socials about the actual podcast episode. So of course, like on launch day, go listen, but then we did audiograms, we did quote cards, and our efforts really paid off. That season that I really took over end to end, our average monthly listeners, is it right? Listeners or downloads? Can't remember which one it was. I think it was listeners. was up 30% season over season. So to me, that was like really, huge. Like I felt really proud of our team and proud of what we accomplished. And so having put in all of this work to basically build a media strategy from the ground up, and then to see sort of Cheryl take it on at C Club has just been like really a gift. Like it's the way that has, they moved over to Paragraph from, we were previously using Substack. Like that's been really great to see that they're using Web3 native tooling. And then, in terms of like C Club as an entity itself, when I started, it was the DAO accelerator, the Web3 accelerator. So really focused on DAOs and tokenized communities, all the various phrases that we've bestowed on this ever morphing entity. But then in winter of 20, I guess that would have been 23, winter of 23. So this was post FTX. Space was down bad, if anyone remembers, and we were kind of like, what's next? This DAO. There's lots of value in DAOs, but it seems like there might be, what's sort of next on the horizon. And consumer crypto was what emerged out of that. So now C Club has fully transformed into the Consumer Crypto Accelerator, and this, the idea is that DAOs are consumer products, right? So instead of focusing on just DAOs, you get to focus on the entire consumer stack or consumer ecosystem. So I felt like a really exciting shift. And then I ended up being in the 6th cohort of the accelerator with Vessel, which was super fun to kind of be on the other side of it. And then, quickly, I'll just touch on Fest and C Club. So because one of the things that Jess and I were interested in doing back in January of 2023, we had a team offsite, and we were talking about doing our own consumer crypto gathering because there hadn't been one in the space, and we felt like it was time, and it could be a really good thing for C Club to go own. Over the course of a couple months, putting up a conference is no small feat, and I think FWB came to C Club and was like, hey, look. The plan, the idea behind FWB, behind Fast, is that it's supposed to be a platform, and that previously FWB had curated all the programming, but they want to kind of open it up to others, and saw us as an interesting partner, also knowing that we wanted to throw our own conference. So we basically agreed to throw our consumer crypto conference or summit within Fast, and so that was Eyewitness Live. So it was billed as and programmed as its own conference within Fast, which was super exciting. I love thinking about IRL programmatic stuff. I think from what I remember and what people had said to me, it felt like it was a really useful set of conversations that were had in the library at Fest. Just super super grateful to have had that experience and to have like proved out that concept a little bit.
I mean, it's really interesting to kind of hear you use this word a lot, and I think it's actually very, very useful, and I think something we can all learn from. And you use strategy a lot. I think in terms of how C Club initially was either creating or promoting their content, to the way that they were engaging maybe with their community. Like once there was a more strategic vision, and that vision was put into play, it sounds like the effects were significantly different and measurable and improved. It sounds like one thing that I personally think can be improved upon, and I'd love to get your thoughts as, the social media expert. I'm going to put it out there.
Oh my gosh.
Founders need to do better when it comes to telling their stories. Online especially, and on-chain now too. I wonder if you have any thoughts, being that you've been very strategic with Seed Club, with Vessel, and now with FWB. What have you seen people do that they can improve on when it comes to telling their story and then sharing it across Web2 and Web3 platforms?
Yeah, this is a really juicy question. Having been on effectively all sides of the coin, having done, built and led our media marketing strategy at C Club, also advising portcos, and then having to, strategize and execute on a media strategy for Vessel, which now, having been a founder, I struggled. I struggled to maintain a consistent beat of media for Vessel. And I mean, as all founders know, it's like there's so many things flying at you all at once. Ultimately, you are tied to your product, and so anything that takes you away from your product or from basically, creating something valuable for users, it often gets pushed towards the bottom of the stack, very bottom of the stack, because you've just got triage, trying to ship things. So that was a really good lesson for me. And yeah, I mean, it's funny for you to say social media expert, because I've been thinking more and more about how we define what that is, because I think there's one way to define it, which is like to look at vanity metrics, right? Like I have 5,575 followers or something. Yes, I'm counting. Of course I'm counting. But I look at people who have you're a great example of like, or 5-digit follower counts, right? And like that looks amazing. And I get very, I'm not immune to like surfing crypto Twitter and looking at and seeing people who have way more followers than me and just like feeling really small. And like that's a totally natural thing. But I think that there are actually many metrics through which we can define what makes someone an expert, quote unquote, or what makes someone good at marketing. And I think that follower count is 100% one of them. But there's also, others that we could consider. Engagement rate is one. Like, what is the dedication of the actual fan base, and some of those things they're less obvious, right? Because you get to a profile page, and what do you see is that number. So that's always been an interesting. I find it neutral. I just find it as an interesting sort of design constraint when I'm thinking about a marketing strategy. And yeah, so I think. I've been doing a lot of this, like, don't hire a CMO. I was on a Twitter Spaces earlier, I guess it was yesterday or earlier this week, where I was talking about my very sort of like very intense and robust marketing operations, because I'm a one-person marketing team, and we are a 3-person executive team at FWB, and we are, we have, probably a total of like 10 overall people working on FWB, but 3 of us are the actual full-time core. And yeah, so I kind of went off about my marketing operations, so I'm happy to like outline again here. But and it was funny because the other 2 folks in the space, Winnie and Ben, like they were kind of like the opposite, like, oh no, like we are not like that, like, and it's if you take one thing and look at their vanity metrics, right? It's like, oh, they have way more followers, right? And part of what they were saying was like, one was consistency, you just gotta do consistency. The other one, Winnie was great. She's like, I just like fucking tweet anything. And that's, so it's like when you talk about strategy, there's all kinds of strategy. And I don't think there is a single whatever it is, one size fits all. Like for FWB, we need that kind of operational robustness, right? As a brand, 1-person marketing team, we're executing on like 20 plus roadmaps, literally, at any given time. I'm managing 4 different, like, distinct social platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Lens, and Warpcast. One of those social platforms has 2 different posting types, technically 3. We also have Discord, we have newsletter. So I would not be effective at my job if I didn't have robust marketing operations. But that being said, let's say you're a startup and you're a CEO, you've got a CTO, maybe you've got a head of product or something like that. It doesn't make sense for you to have the level of operational robustness that I have, right? And I think to Ben's point, in what he was saying was that consistency is the most important thing, right? You just got to be showing up every single day. Sometimes you ship things that are like not your favorite, but when it comes to marketing, the consistency is what matters then. I also think there's something really interesting about, the charismatic founder, and the way in which that can be an important lever to grow your brand. I think Winnie is a really great example of that with Chipped, right? Winnie is the only reason why I even knew about Chipped. I think Winnie is an incredible human to bump into online, and I think what she's building is also really incredible. But if you look at the marketing strategy there, it's really centered around Winnie and Winnie's brilliance. So this is all to say that like there are many different ways to sort of staff up or think about strategy for marketing. And it's so contextual. So anytime someone has a hot take on marketing, I'm like, maybe, but there's so much more to be, behind that.
Okay. So going back You've mentioned a few people here, and I want to give them their flowers too, because I agree. Cheryl is probably one of the few newsletters that I open is Seed Club. When I get it, I'm very excited about it. And there's something about it actually that makes it special. And I think you've been hitting on that a lot. And there's that personality that comes through. It doesn't feel corporate. It doesn't feel like you're trying to teach me something. It just feels like someone's on the other side pouring their thoughts about something that they're excited about, which then that excitement basically comes through the page, right, or through the screen. And I'm then equally excited to read it and then equally excited to see the next one. Same thing, I agree. I think you were saying about Chipped. I think that, as a platform, what they're talking about is actually quite boring. It's identity, right?
Yes.
But the execution is it's very human. Right. This idea that you're going to put something that is stylish, something that is social, right? Because you're connecting in person with people. That's really cool. Right. And yeah, absolutely. The Winnie's personality also comes through all of that. It's interesting, too, that you mentioned the difference between how individuals can express themselves and share and connect and the narratives, I guess, that they can spin up that people can then also, connect with versus like brands or, businesses, right? It's very different. And I think it's very hard to try to find a balance between the two where an individual would try to take on the voice of a business and then a business will try to take on the voice of an individual. It's a very hard thing to do, but I think Cheryl with Seed Club is a good example of that, where somehow it's Seed Club, but also it's Cheryl. And probably I would say it's more so Cheryl, like 70-30. Because when I'm reading it, I see her name at the top and the voice comes through as being a very individual voice. So not easy, but definitely if you can find that, I think it's super special.
Yeah. I mean, I like plus 1,000 on that. And Boys Club, I think, was a good sort of prototype for that. They've ever since they launched their newsletter, gosh, maybe it's 2 years now. They've always signed it with the writer and the editor, and that was something that it's like such a minor detail, but it really makes a difference. And it's actually something that I've been playing with at FWB as well. I'm now that I'm 6 months in, I've sort of kind of done my time to just do a little bit of the sitting back, taking a look at what's happening, how things have been done, doing incremental changes. But now that we're 6 months in, we're going into full okay, this is Steph as chief marketing officer for a brand. So Boys Club did a great example. And on the sort of tension between individual accounts and brand accounts, this is something I've been playing with at FWB as well. I've been making it very known that I am the voice behind all the social channels. And there are ways where I've I think to your point, we are over the, okay, I don't want to make a sweeping generalization here. It's more fun. It's more fun and it's different as a brand strategy to sort of dox yourself as the person behind the brand account. Actually, this is a really deep cut, but I learned this from the previous social media manager at Paper. I can't remember her name now. This was during the pandemic. I was following Paper on Instagram, and their captions were laugh out loud funny. I was like, who is writing? It was so unhinged, but so sharp and so funny. And it turns out I found my way to her somewhere. And she was just this Instagram, woman. I think she only had 3,000 followers or something. And then she ended up going to The Cut. So I kind of watched her and watched the brand she was working for change over time. I don't know if she's still at The Cut now because this was years ago, but knowing that about her really changed my understanding of how a brand could be on socials. And so I'm experimenting with that a little bit at FWB. And another great example is Kate Poley at Boys Club as well. So Kate Poley is I said this on Twitter Spaces, study Kate. Kate's content creation is so sharp. I don't know how she does it. So sharp, so funny. And she also has made it very clear that she's behind the brand at Boys Club. And yeah, I think we just want to interact with humans, no one wants to interact with I think it's why Duolingo is doing so well, right? Because you just have a sense that this is just some like kind of manic person behind the account, and in the disguised as the bird. And I think it just works so well. It delights people. It feels relatable.
By the way, I'm reading the chat, so I forgot also to mention at the top of the pod that we live stream on Unlonely, and I'm reading the chat there, and and people are just loving the call outs, the shout outs to Cheryl at C Club, Kate over at Boys Club, the Boys Club newsletter. Like people are like, oh, it's top shelf. That's like what I read, and I agree with you. That's one of the other newsletters that I'm excited to read. And you know what? As a media platform, Crypto Sapiens, we can do better. Like I have a team that's supports Crypto Sapiens.
All do better.
And this is exactly what I said. When I brought to them the two newsletters that I was like, these are the ones that we should read, understand, digest, and then see if we can capture a little bit of that, what they're doing well, and not reproduce it. Obviously, it's our own voice, but let's try to communicate in a way that connects the way that they're connecting, because I love when I get that newsletter. I promise you, there's been times where I've like signed up for something and somehow I'm also now on their newsletter, and I immediately go to the unsubscribe button because I'm like, A, no thank you. B, what was this? This was boring. Like, I do not want to read this. Yeah, and so I unsubscribe with the quickness. But those two, I'm excited to read. What's up? Maybe I'm going to embarrass myself here, but does FWB have a newsletter? Should I be reading that?
No, this is good. This is really good data points. So we have historically had a newsletter. It was called TLDR. And funny story, part of my lore, when I onboarded to crypto, God, here we go again. December 2021. I read about FWB in the Times or something like that, and really wanted to get in, and the tokens were $80 each at that point. And I couldn't afford the 75. I was like, this is not a thing for me. I couldn't really afford the 5, which is what was required to go to any FWB events. But if you got one token, you could read the TLDR. The TLDR, which was like a summary of what happened in the Discord. So it was token gated on the site. So I, for the longest time, had one FWB. So I could read the TLDR.
Same here, by the way.
Yeah. I know. Let me tell, we've all done it. We've all done it. But yeah, so TLDR is coming back. It's every week on Thursday. Super excited about that. It's gonna continue to evolve over the summer. Right now, it's obviously gonna be very fest focused, but we have, we've been doing so much. Like we're about to launch, or about to start publishing our next editorial series, which is a five edition editorial series where we commissioned 5 essays on the future of squad wealth, basically like the intersection of digital and cultural currency, and what do digital payments have to do with culture. So super excited about that, and that'll be pushed through our newsletter. So there's just a bunch of other things that we have coming down the line, especially post-fest, that I'm excited to have captured in TLDR. And on top of that, I'm just excited for us to continue to expand our media presence. There's so much you can do with a newsletter. Yes, I'm just very excited to see how we shape it up in the fall.
Yeah, newsletters are super, super powerful. But very hard to do right. I hope that it's your voice that comes through that, because I would be equally excited to have that be in the 3 newsletters that I look forward to reading and read every week.
Hell yeah. All right. This is my new bar. I need to be accountable to Humpty. So everyone, we'll check in. We'll check in the fall and see how I'm doing.
Yeah, I'll check in with you at Fest.
Hell yeah.
And then we'll have a chat about that. I'm sure you'll do exceptionally well. Everything you set your mind to, I think you do exceptionally well. So I guess I want to go back to something here that we were talking about earlier, which I think was interesting. You mentioned this idea of like strategy, social media strategy from the followers perspective and the engagement perspective. I can tell you right now that having 5-digit followers to me is actually a very low bar. And I don't mean because I could have 6 followers, 6 numbers. I mean because the true measure of value for me is the engagement metric. And
Let's
for
go.
me, and I look
Yeah.
at me and you, and I'm like, I could do better. Just having that 5 number follower is, I don't know, it's kind of like whatever. It's like, I look at the engagement and I go, oh my gosh, like, what's going on here? Why are people not clicking? I get it. A lot of the times it's because I'm pretty naive and I always include links. And we know the X
Oh,
gods don't like links. So now my
totally.
posts are getting buried. But also, I could do better in terms of the way that I communicate my ideas on X so that people go, oh, that was interesting. Let me engage with it. So, but then I look at you and I look at others and I go, oh my gosh, like they have like 3,000, they have 5,000, and like their engagement is like through the
Yeah.
roof. I'm like, that probably got like 10 to 20,000 impressions alone on that post. Mine, 100, 200. So, that's to say that like, I don't think that like the number of followers was ever of importance to me on X. Now, new platforms like Farcaster are interesting, right? Because for me at least, I can speak to the number of people I have there on Farcaster following me is huge compared to a lot of people. But there it was primarily about being early, right? Whereas it wasn't so much about like consistency. I think that's part of it. I was very consistent, but I also didn't have a very clear thought in terms of what I was going to be expressing or sharing there. It's just been like, hey, I'm on Farcaster. Hello, everybody. I'm still on Farcaster on a daily or weekly basis. What are your thoughts in terms then of using like Web3 social, like Farcaster and Lens, when it comes to individuals and brands?
Yeah. I have takes on this for sure. Yeah, I think so. The irony of being a Web3 native marketer, crypto native marketer, and the way in which we have pushed for decentralization, pushed for new tools, and what we have done is just doubled our workload. So I think about that every day because anytime that we do a launch comms or anything, I have a minimum of a 3-page document with all of our platforms, all of the copy that we're going to write out, all of the creative, and it's just the only way that I get things done. And it's wild. It's wild that like I basically have to write this. I'm just doing so much writing on a regular basis, which is actually a good thing for me personally. But so yeah, what do I think about using these tools as both a brand and individual? So I think there's a couple threads to pull on here. Distribution wise, Twitter and Instagram are not going anywhere, right? Like they're still critical distribution avenues, they're critical advertising avenues, especially if you do paid ads. And it's still important for brands, especially to have presences on those platforms and to have strategies for those platforms. Do individuals need to be on those platforms and use it for the purpose of work or brand building? Really depends on what the audience you're going after is, right? Like Twitter is like very much media, very much crypto. Instagram is very much culture. It's fascinating for FWB to see the difference between our both follower counts and then also our engagement on both platforms. Engagement is way higher on Instagram and just like way more. It's like all of our culture followers. Yeah. We have engagement anywhere between like 5 to 7% on most of our posts, whereas on yeah, it's pretty good. Whereas on Twitter, I'm happy if we breach 2.5% on engagement. And yeah, so it's also pretty good, right?
Still very good. Yeah. I mean, I think
yeah,
what's the industry standard? Like anything over 1%. So you've doubled
I
that.
think
That's strong.
yeah, it's like 1 or 1.5. And to your point earlier about having 5-digit follower counts on Twitter, we just know like the higher your follower count is, the harder it is to maintain a engagement rate. So like give yourself grace. It's like it's hard to capture that same percentage from a bigger number, of course, right? So yeah, for brand and individuals, that's what I would say for the sort of trad platforms. And then when it comes to Lens and Farcaster, I think that these platforms are presenting such a fascinating industry breakdown. I'm going to give my sort of like marketer take on the platforms, and then I'll give my personal take, which is like, not financial advice kind of vibe. But yeah, I think Farcaster is like, you have to be on Farcaster if you're a founder, if you're yeah, if you're a founder, if you're a VC working in crypto or consumer crypto, it's like critical path that you're on there, critical path that you're engaged, especially engaging with, the chains like Base for sure. But I think, so it works really well for that. As a brand, Farcaster is very hard to manage, but I think that they're solving that with channels, right? And that's a great sort of like way to source brand building from your community of people who are interested. I think it's still like important to have a Farcaster channel or Farcaster brand account. I can't really speak to like what the best strategy is or how important it is to do that, but I think it's just a good idea. We definitely have one at FWB. And like someone's gonna bop me for this, and it actually might be Cheryl, because I think Cheryl kind of figured it out, but I, like, for the life of me, have not been able to figure out the seamless transition between personal Webcast account and brand account. I've tried Supercast. I think Yup now has a solution, but the lapse of I've just been so inactive on my personal account on Farcaster that I've a little bit just given up on it. But that's just like on me, right? I don't think that's a good strategy for anyone to follow. And then in terms of Lens, interestingly, FWB, our follower count at Lens has grown significantly more, and also our engagement is just way more higher on Lens. We also just like really like Lens as partners. Like, huge shout out to Cree and Maria Paula and Christina. I've had technical questions. They've just been very available. We're doing a really sick activation with them at Fest. Like, they just really get the culture piece. So as a brand, like, if you are in culture and if you're a crypto brand or a non-crypto brand in culture, like Lens, I would say Lens is the place to go. Just, again, our engagement is way higher there. We just have more people who are interested in us. But if you're a founder, if you're doing, consumer crypto or sort of infrastructure or protocol, anything like that, Farcaster is probably a good bet. And yeah, I think, what was the last thing I was going to say? I think the Lens v Farcaster, the various cabals that have established themselves on these social networks is very fascinating to me, just in the way that like psychology plays into so much of our marketing and the way that we adopt products. So I'm so curious to see where Farcaster goes now that they've recapitalized. And I think, I'm not in that room, not in the executive room. I have no idea how they're making their decisions, but very curious to see where they take it in the next 2 years.
I'm going to bring a couple of the questions that are being shared in on Unlonely. One of those from Ernest says, do you have any tips for introverted founders to be more consistent publicly? Any thoughts there?
Yes. Introversion is something that you can totally mask on the internet. I love talking to people. Like, I think that's clear. But I have gone through periods of my life where I have felt more introverted, and the internet, like hiding behind an account or something like that, has been actually a very helpful way for me to just kind of break out of that. And if you are, especially some people who are introverts, just get very drained by all of the energy, and whether that's like on, digitally or in person. So I think you are having these thoughts wherever you are. You're walking your dog, cooking dinner, you're at the bar. Jot them down, throw them in a note stock, keep that note stock open, and then just like schedule the posts, or like set an alarm or a reminder on your phone and just like put one out there. And I think that's a great way to do consistency. And then that also gives you the chance to decide, maintain a strong draft sort of tweet or post note, and then you can just like send them on the fly, so that you're not necessarily like having a thought and then feeling like you need to tweet it or post it right away, because that works for some people and doesn't work for others.
Unless you're Winnie, then you can do that. It
works for Winnie, yes. And I'm definitely the type who's like I think some people will notice I tweet more like late at night.
Nice.
Like after I've had like a hit or two, and I'm just like feeling a little bit, my blood pressure's down, and I'm just like, for my personal, like I treat my personal just like like I'm walking into a party.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, but you could also say that like at the end of the day, kind of all of the things that you've been going through are starting to kind of settle, and
yes.
a lot of those ideas maybe are coming together and you're like, oh, I thought about this and this, and there's actually a connection there. And I could see why you'd be inspired to be like, bam, I'm just going to post something real quick. Whether it, whether other people hits with other people or not, it's at least for me, it's a way to document my own thought process and something I can build on later on. Like I might be like, oh, like I shot out like those 2 or 3 tweets. I might be able to write an article on that, something like that.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And I definitely am the type of person who like, I need to be moving my body to like fully integrate stuff. So I do a lot of like ottering while I'm walking. I'll just like kind of voice note to myself what I'm thinking about, or when I'm cooking, I keep my computer. This is like very kind of a naughty thing, but I keep my computer while I'm cooking. I've got 2 kids. I'm a single mom, so like I'm constantly multitasking. But I do a lot of my best thinking when I'm cooking, actually, too.
That is wild. Okay, so cooking and tweeting. I think that might be like the next Unlonely show. Just shout out to Unlonely because they're always working on like these far out ideas or concepts. It's like cooking and casting or something. And then, you're like, there's a competition of like, at the end of the day, who cooked the best meal plus like who had the most fire casts throughout that entire session. I think that'd be really funny.
Yesterday was more like cooking and closing deals, which was like really next level. I kind of like got dinner on the table and I was like, oh my God, I think I just blacked out for 40 minutes. And there was like, fresh baked salmon, green beans, quinoa. I was like, oh my God, what has happened? It was a good dinner.
Yeah, that sounds delicious.
Although my kids didn't eat.
I'm known to burn water. I can't cook, so I embarrass myself. I won't embarrass myself in public by cooking and casting. Just as a side note, I had to buy one of those electric tea kettles because I kept burning the pots when I was trying to like boil water. So
real. This is many such cases.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So coming from someone who is an expert chef, I'm glad that I'm not alone.
No, not at all. I've definitely done that.
Cool. Well, I mean, as we're coming to the top of the hour, I mean, anything else that you think we missed? I mean, we hit on a lot of things and we're kind of been everywhere, but I think the consistent theme has been social. Anything we want to talk about there, maybe specifically to Fest 24?
Yeah, I mean, I actually just like, I want to plug, sort of shamelessly, we're doing a drop on Friday for On-Chain Summer. And it's actually been pretty fun to work on the marketing campaign for that and think about that a little bit. It's something different for us at FWB. I mean, we've done drops before. We did one last summer for On-Chain Summer as well. This one's with Seneca, and the scope of the drop is quite big. And I feel pretty excited about that. And also the artwork is just really, really, really great. It's all meme based too, which I think is what makes it super fun. But yeah, I mean, on the topic of social, like I just feel really curious how the rest of this year is going to play out, especially with NFTs and monetizing marketing and the various different token standards that we can now play with. I just feel super stoked to see how they continue to evolve this year.
No, well then, thank you so much for shouting out that drop that's coming up and On-Chain Summer, because I mean we are in On-Chain Summer currently. So I'm always looking forward to see what different people and brands will do to activate their community and to just be a part of this kind of glorious event that's happening worldwide. So definitely stay tuned for more on that. I definitely want to participate. I definitely will be at FW. Here I go again. I'm so uncool. I'll be at Fest later this year. I missed the boat last year because I was like, which I live in LA, so Idlewild is only like an hour away.
You live in LA?
And I was like, I'm going to go. I know, I live in LA. And so I was like, I'm going to go.
I mean, maybe this makes sense that I'm saying this, but this is really the year to go. I mean, last year was my first Fest. I didn't work for FWB at the time, but I walked away and I was like, this is the most important thing in our space for culture. It's just like a truly unmatched experience. And this year we also have Base coming in for the 2 days before the start of Fest, running the first ever Base Camp. So last year they launched to mainnet, and now this year they're coming back and running their first ever IRL conference. And so Fest this year, as we've always wanted Fest to be, is kind of this like big marketing moment, not just for FWB, but actually really for all of our partners. So most partners are going to have sort of big announcements for their H2. We have one partner doing a mainnet launch as well. So just like really, there's all of that. But then of course there's the music, there's the setting, and then we have tons of super fun brand activations that are, we'll have just like some alpha. We'll have an aura photography that's going to be done by Lens. Super excited about that. Actually, you'll see our Through the Lens campaign kind of continue to drip out. It's alluding to that. We'll have tattoos. There's going to be tie-dyeing. There's like all kinds of these like fun, more like tangible experiences in addition to like the lectures and the networking and the heady talks and the music. So definitely, folks come. We would love to see you.
Amazing. Yeah, you can count me in this year. I will not miss it. And speaking to some of the events that have happening recently, and I think it's a cultural shift, is things like FarCon and obviously Fest starting at last year and Fest again this year. I think they're just kind of changing the way that we think of IRL experiences, especially in the crypto space. They feel a lot more culturally led versus like technology led, and I'm all for it. Because I feel like I can connect with people a lot better. I really am more excited about the people element of these spaces.
For sure.
Rad. Well, let us know where we can follow you, where we can follow FWB and get some updates because, there's a drop coming, as you said. So I want to make sure everybody knows where to go and look.
Yeah, notifications on. So I'm at Crypto Honey. That's Crypto HUN3Y. And then FWB is at FWB Tweets on Twitter. And yeah, I mean, also like I love, getting DMs. I might be like a touch slow to respond, but love chatting with folks, especially about marketing. Hoping to, actually on the Twitter space for World of Women yesterday, it was a marketing Twitter space. And I think we just need more spaces, Twitter spaces, but like gathering points, whether they're digital or physical, on crypto native marketing. And so I think something might be coming out of that in H2. So really excited for that too. So any marketers, give me a shout. Would love to chat.
Amazing. And hopefully we'll see you all on Farcaster too. I've been casting to you there. Honey
yes,
Buddy,
I have noticed.
Yes. All righty. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for another episode of Crypto Sapiens. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks for having me.